In this lesson, we're going to learn a bit more of the language of statistics in order to deal with some of our categorical data in a better way. So the first bit of vocabulary that we're going to learn is that of the statistical experiment. Okay, a statistical experiment is an activity within a controlled setting in which data is taken. All statistical experiments have three things in common. The experiment must have more than one possible outcome. Okay, if only one thing can happen, it's not an experiment. Each possible outcome must be specified in advance, and so basically you need to have enough control on this thing that you've thought it through enough that you know what you're looking for and the sort of things that can happen. We want to have it controlled in some way. And three, in spite of this, in spite of the control that you have on it, the outcome of the experiment depends on chance, and we will be giving you some examples to put a little bit of a finer point on this. The first example is flipping a coin. Does it have more than one possible outcome? Well, if you're dealing with a typical coin, yes, it's going to either come down heads or tails. Is each possible outcome specified in advance? Yes, we have our coin. We know the coin has a head on one side and on the other side something that we call the tail, whatever that may be. So yes, this does fit that criterion. And does this experiment depend on chance? Well, yes, it does. You flip a coin. You know, if you have a coin that does in fact have two sides and you are flipping it in a fair way, then this does depend on chance. Example 2, tossing a six-sided die. Okay, it's just one of these regular game dies that has dots on the side. Does it have more than one possible outcome? Well, yes, there are 6 possible outcomes. 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot, all the way up through 6 dots. Can these outcomes be specified in advance? Yes, we know what the die looks like. Does it depend on chance? Well, yes. Okay, given that it's a fair die. Well, and even if it's not a fair die, even if it's been loaded, there is still an element of chance in that. Okay, some other examples that might not be so apparent to you. We live in a world where we fill out forms all of the time. And so if you come to a form and you fill out a marital status, or you have a form where you have people are required to fill out their marital status, you do have an idea of what it's going to be. I mean, there's only a certain number of ways that this can happen, and we can set those ahead of time. Political affiliation. Okay, you have people who are registering to vote. There are a fixed number of ways where this can be done. We know ahead of time, but at the end of it, the person in front of us filling out that form might not fill it out the same way as we do. Okay. Now, when we're thinking in terms of a statistical experiment, the sample space is the set of all outcomes that experiment can have. Okay, so we've thought this experiment out. This is what can happen. The sample space is what can happen. Okay, and an event, okay, I've gone. An event is a subset of that sample space. Okay. So we often think, the sample space is going to be a population for our experiment, and we can define a random variable on that. So we'll have x, a random variable on that. Okay, and so we can start talking about the probability of a subset. The probability of a subset is the same as the proportion of outcomes of that subset within the sample space. And so we think of our sample space. This is what can happen. Our event is something within that sample space. It's a subset of that. And so if we have a couple of events, here I have events A in red and B in blue. The intersection of that sample space is the set of outcomes. Okay, the intersection of A and B are the set of outcomes that they have in common. Okay. And the union of those two events is the set of outcomes that is either in one of them or in the other. Okay, and so we will be dealing with this language in our next session, when we start talking about categorical data and taking slices.